The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, a chaotic Thursday here in Southern California and in America, because the NFL free agent signings and trades are just happening at warp speed. A little bit later, we're going to have Grantland's head football writer, Bill Barnwell, is going to come on. He's been killing it during free agency. But right now, our old friend, our guy, Mike Lombardi from the NFL Network. What's happening?
A lot, Bill. It's awesome. Football's back, and it couldn't be at a better time.
What is it like to go from lockout, boring, lockout, boring, lockout, and then all of a sudden a million transactions?
Well, your suntan goes way down. I mean, there's nothing to read on the beach. All you can do is sit on the beach. It's awesome. I mean, it's just everything we wanted, and it's basically everything condensed in a week. You know, players complaining about contracts, teams signing players, trades. It's like this just giant fester of information coming in, and teams are looking at it. It's tremendous.
I don't even know where to start. So I guess let's start with McNabb, probably the biggest move so far, going to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think, McNabb, I thought today's Haynesworth news was probably, groundbreaking, shocking. I know a lot of people anticipated him going up to New England, but, the quarterbacks always take center stage. Donovan, to me, is at a point in his career where it's more important. People say, well, can he help Minnesota? I think Donovan has to help Donovan first. I think he's got to reestablish his career as a hard worker, reestablish his career as a guy who can make plays, reestablish his career as a quarterback in the National Football League, something that 1 year in Washington, 13 games, basically destroyed.
Ugh. What about Haynesworth with I can't say I was shocked. I can't say I was shocked because Belichick is he likes talent. He'll roll the dice with these guys. He did it with Corey Dillon. He did it with Randy Moss. But at the same time, the Patriots play a 3-4. This is what Haynesworth didn't want to play at Washington. How does this make sense?
Well, he didn't want to play nose tackle for Mike Shanahan, but let's go back to Belichick. I mean, once you've coached Lawrence Taylor, I mean, is there anything harder to coach than him? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Lawrence Taylor was a tremendous player on the field, but there were some issues that came up. But I think that when you look at this on the surface, New England's 32nd in the league in third down defense. They could not create any negative plays. They were a team that struggled to ever get the defense on the other side of the ball on the offense. And because their offense was so good, they could get the lead, and then they made teams play catch-up, which was perfect for them. Now, as it relates to Haynesworth, it's ideal for Haynesworth because, A, they'll still get the lead. B, teams will have to throw the ball on him. And now Albert Haynesworth will line up over a guard along with Vince Wilfork, and somebody's going to have to double both of them, and somebody's going to be on an island. And I think they'll get him to play harder. Pepper Johnson, the D-line coach, he's a guy, played in the league. He's got a reputation in the league. I think Haynesworth wants to prove to people that what happened in Washington to him isn't necessarily who he is all the time. I mean, he's going to have his moments of inconsistent effort. That's what most defensive linemen typically do. But the other key element here is $12 million for 2 years, none of it which is guaranteed. So the carrot's always dangling in front of Haynesworth's nose, which is always what you want to have.
So maybe I screwed up my memory of the Washington thing. Wait, Washington's defense was what last year?
They were horrendous. They were the worst team. They were trying to fit a 34 defense with no 34 personnel, and they were trying to play him at nose tackle. And, look, he's not a nose tackle. He's not a guy like Vince Wilfork who could just sit in there and have people come at him at different angles. That's not his game. He needs to play in gaps and use his physical dominance to be able to lure two people to block him all the time. And this is a game changer, Bill. This guy is one of the players that when you're getting ready on Tuesday afternoon, you got to ask yourself the question, how are we going to block this guy? And the way the Patriots will use him will create even more problems because they'll move him around, and you won't know where he's going to be each Sunday.
Well, I remember last year, a year ago exactly, when he went on the trade block, you and I talked about this, and I said this would be the first guy on the Patriots defense in a while who the other teams would have to really worry about. But yet he had a terrible year. I mean, are we even sure he's that guy anymore?
You see it all the time on the tape. If you put the Bears tape on, you see it. Now you see some bad plays too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we wouldn't be in this situation. They wouldn't be buying him on a discounted fifth-round pick in 2013 if he was dominant on every play. But you see it. The Bears game, he was disruptive. The Lions game, he was disruptive. And I think the other factor here, Floyd Reese, the general manager of Tennessee, was in Tennessee when they drafted Haynesworth. He knows him. He's in New England now. Jim Schwartz worked for us, all of us in Cleveland when we were there. Bill knows him. Schwartz wanted to bring Haynesworth to Detroit, signed off on him. And I think the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles and Jim Washburn would have liked to have him back, would have liked to have him to coach him, tells you an awful lot. I think they're disappointed they didn't get him in Philadelphia. So when you combine all those elements going together, I think you put Belichick's track record of being able to handle him in a locker room that has a lot of veteran leadership, especially Woolfolk in the room. He can't be the alpha male in the room. He's going to have to be kind of follow Vince Wilfolk's lead, and if it's good for Wilfolk, it's got to be good for Haynesworth.
But what about Ty Warren? Because he's coming back too.
You know, and then Ty Warren comes back. So now all of a sudden you've got three defensive linemen. You got a defensive line that reminds you back when they were really good back in the early days, 2000, 2002, 3. You know, in those years where they had a physical front. I think if they could find one more outside linebacker to go along with Cunningham and Nowitzki, I think they have a chance to really get their front seven back to where they were. They're going to be able to cover. They've got corners, especially getting Bodden back. And they have Dowling, who they think is a good player. I think they have enough pieces now. They just got to get that one guy who can be the disruptive force.
Right. So they got the push with the line, but they still don't have the outside guys, and that's the part that I've been waiting for the one big thing. Now, this Jets thing with Asamoah, if this happens, you know, I mean, I guess you would make the argument, does it make sense to get two of something in the NFL where you really need to spread your money around and all this? And I was making this argument in the office yesterday, and people are like, no, you're crazy. They could just single cover everybody and just send the house every time. I got to be honest, I don't even know how to react to the thought of Revis and Asamoah on the same team. Would this be as insane as it seems like it would be on paper?
Well, here's the problem with it. Revis makes $11.5 per year on a deal. And to get Asamoah today, as we do this podcast, he's going to get somewhere between $12 and $14 million, which means he's going to make more than Revis. And I know Revis said that's okay, no big deal, but it really is a big deal. And you got to keep your structure of your team. That would be like having three quarterbacks on your team that make over $10 million a year. It's very difficult to do. It would give the Jets a tremendous secondary. It would give them a lot of flexibility in their coverages, but it would also limit them in some other things they had to do free agent-wise, which would affect them down the road. I don't know if it's going to happen. Yesterday it was seeming like it was heating up, but then Houston really has kind of anteed up, and right now I was told by two teams in the league that they think Houston is in the lead because Houston's throwing some severe money around.
And that would be too bad because we all know that Houston's not going to do anything with Gary Kubiak. But it reminds me of putting those two guys together. It's like when in a fantasy draft when somebody tries to get cute and takes two quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds. And it looks awesome on paper, but then ultimately it doesn't make sense because you weren't able to spend the right amount of money on the rest of your team. But at the same time, man, have both of those guys locking down receivers. It's a little frightening. What would he do for Houston, just out of curiosity? Like, would that change how you feel about them? For Houston, would that change how you feel about them as a contender in 2011?
No, because I thought the quote of the year was Eric Winston when he found out about the practice rules. He said, you know, look, we have the leading rusher on our team, and we never went in pads. And to me, it just proves why I don't like Houston as a team. They're not physical. You know, and so until Houston proves to get physical enough, now look, Asamoah will make him a much better player. There's no question. They don't have anybody in their secondary that can cover. Yeah. So he'll make him a much better player. But they've got to prove to me that they can do some things that can be effective down the line in terms of their physical toughness. And when I read the Winston quote, I was like, this to me would be evidence to prove my point about the Houston Texans.
What other
they think they're being physical, when in reality they can't get physical because they never practice physical.
Right. What other blue chippers other than Asamoah? Like, Haynesworth now, you feel like he's a possible game changer. There are a couple guys out there that you feel like if they go to the right contender could really change the chessboard a little bit here?
Yeah, I mean, the Reggie Bush move today is interesting because I don't see him as a game changer, but Miami must think he's a game changer. And I think Ahmad Bradshaw's a better all-around player than Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush is sexy, and he's got the Kardashian factor once in his life, but I don't think that really matters. I think Ahmad Bradshaw's a better player. He's a better pass protector, and I think now the Giants get Ahmad Bradshaw back, which I think will really help them. You know, I think the Matt Hasselbeck signing in Tennessee is interesting because Tennessee's not that bad of a team. When they get Chris Johnson into camp, I think Hasselbeck will give them at least a little bit of quarterback play, which will make them a little more dangerous and will make them more effective. They had no quarterback play last year whatsoever. So I think that will. And then once we start to get through this corner market, once Asamoah declares where he's going to go, if Joseph goes to Detroit, I think that makes Detroit a much better team. And then we'll see what happens with Cromartie.
And Nate Clements is out there too. You feel like would you put him on that list of interesting guys? Because I feel like I would.
I'm not really believing that Nate Clements could come back and be the player he once was. I think it's going to take some time for I'm not sure corners ever get it back.
Oh.
And I don't think I know he didn't want to take a pay cut, and it would be surprised to me if he could be a shutdown corner that people, when they signed him, they thought he was.
So you're saying cornerbacks are like point guards?
Exactly.
Mike Bibby loses that half step, it's over. It doesn't come back.
It's over, and I think it's hard to get back. And I think once they know it, then they play different. Like Champ Bailey right now knows he can't run with certain people, so he just backs off, and he plays a different game than the Champ Bailey did 4 or 5 years ago. But when he knows he can run with a guy like Dwayne Bowe, he knows he can eat him up. Then clearly he can jump on them and be good. But once they know they can't run anymore, it becomes a factor. I thought one of the players you learned this most from was Ty Law. Ty Law did a great job of knowing his limitations in their scheme and how he could play it, and he really did a great job of studying it because he knew he couldn't run with certain guys and he knew how to play them.
Right. You know, one of the guys that I liked going into this whole week was Steve Breston. And he ended up on a team that I wasn't crazy about. I don't know if I like him on the Chiefs. I thought he was a good value guy. What do you think?
I think Breston really is a good player. I thought he really got handicapped by the offense last year without a quarterback. And I think, the Chiefs, that's a nice pickup. Haley knows him. I think he can help Matt Castle, and I think he gives them some versatility. They don't really have an explosive player on their offense. They try to get it with McCluster, and he doesn't really have a position. And really, Dwayne Bowe, we had a poll at the NFL Network. Dwayne Bowe, I think, was the 41st or 47th best player in the league. I don't know who took this poll. I don't know. They had Greg Jennings rated 70-something and Bowe ahead of him. It's not even close. So I think Kansas City needs more explosion.
Well, they have McCluster, they have Dwayne Bowe, and then they spent a first-rounder on a receiver. So that's what
and they got to get him ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a little time for Baldwin to be ready.
Plus, the other thing is, when you're getting a receiver like that who just basically was playing with Venus DeMilo as his quarterback, like that guy, any sort of upgrade is going to be – the flip side of that would be Sidney Rice going to Seattle for big, big money, and now he has Tavares thrown for him again. If you're a Seahawks fan, you can't be happy about that.
Yeah, I don't like what Seattle's doing. I don't like their locker room. I don't like the whole dynamic of their football team. I think it's a lot of pieces – and not a team. I think it's a lot of players that you line up, and it looks like you've improved the talent level, but have you improved the chemistry or what's happening with the team? I just don't get a sense. I mean, Tavares struggled in the offense that Darrell Bevell coached, and they're still going to bring him back. So, and then Sidney Rice, you pay him all this money. I'm sure that Minnesota could have had Sidney Rice back if they were willing to match the deal, and I don't think Minnesota wanted to match the deal. I think they were willing to let this go because I think there's some downside to this. This has all the earmarks of one of those signings that 2 years from now he'll probably be playing in New England at a reduced deal.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. How many times are we going to overpay wide receivers? When are we going to learn our lesson with that one? It just seems like that position is just too volatile. Like, I'd rather have Steve Breston for $9 million than Sidney Rice for $48 or whatever it was. I just don't think there's that much of a difference. You agree?
Agree.
All right. And then, the other guy that's sitting out there, you look at all the quarterbacks that have flipped teams. Kyle Orton's sitting out there. I feel like he's better than any quarterback that's changed hands this week. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I think when you really study Kyle Orton, you got to break him down in a couple factors. You got to look at him on third down. Not a good third down quarterback. Gets rid of the ball too soon, doesn't stay in there and take the hit, doesn't really want to squeeze the ball tight to make the throw that he has to make. I think the other area you look at him, and Denver was horrible at this, red zone offense. He really didn't make plays down in the red zone. He struggled to handle that. And then the other factor is blitz. When teams blitzed Denver last year, even though they had the right play called, Orton got rid of the ball too quickly. So the more volume that Orton got with his offense, the less effective he came. So where does that lead you back to? It leads you back to that Orton should really be a quarterback of a team like the Chicago Bears that want to predominantly run the football and use him in a play-action pass game and try to keep him out as many third downs as he possibly can, because that's not when he excels, and they've got to do a great job protecting for him.
I'm amazed that you didn't use your 2020 thing there with the Kyle Orton breakdown.
Well, he's got more than 20 games.
No, I'm saying your 20. He's great between the 20s, but
there's no question he's a 2020 player. But even then, that's the red zone factor. But then he gets hit up with, he's not a very good against blitz. Like if you blitz Tom Brady, then it's buyer beware. You got to risk it. You got to hope he doesn't read it and throw it out there. Yeah. But if you blitz Kyle Orton, you take the Jet game against Kyle Orton. The Jet game, Denver had the Jets beat convincingly if Orton could make a few throws. But he just wouldn't hang in there long enough.
I still like him more than Tavares Jackson. And by the way...
all that being said, I can't say... Tavares isn't even a 2020 player.
He's a 40-40 player.
Well, he's a four-down player. He gets one first down, and then it's an interception.
And I might like Kyle Orton more than Kevin Kolb. I think Andy Reid, he sold about as high as you're gonna sell on Kevin Kolb. We have no idea if this guy's gonna be good. Did Arizona officially get him? What did they give up?
Not quite yet. It's still going on. What
are they looking at? What kind of price?
I think that's variable. I think it's a little bit like they're talking about Cromartie at the corner. And then they were talking about some other pieces, and I keep asking myself the question, why did they have to throw any pieces in?
Right.
I mean, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, and for Kolb, I'm not all down the road on Kevin Kolb. If Kevin Kolb was the next great quarterback, then why isn't Philadelphia keeping him? Michael Vick can't play 16 games.
Yeah, we're contractually obligated to talk about Brett Favre for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Wouldn't it make sense for him to be the backup of Philly? I think that's a huge win for him.
Well, could Brett Favre sign? He's not going to hold the clipboard.
You don't think so?
No chance. That would be like asking Michael Jordan to be the sixth man. Not that I'm saying Brett Favre and Michael Jordan are the same player.
Yeah.
But you're asking a guy to come back and play a different role that has he doesn't even comprehend that role.
Right. All right. Santonio Holmes, overpaid, underpaid, properly paid?
I think he probably got properly paid. I think the Jets got a good deal. He gave the Jets a good deal. The Redskins were more wanted to sign him. The Redskins' number one priority this offseason was to sign Santonio Holmes, and Dan Snyder usually doesn't get beat when he has that as a priority. But Santonio Holmes wanted to stay in New York, and I think the Jets wanted him there, and they made sure they got him. But, I think he could have gotten a little bit more from Washington.
And when you look back at, the Steelers basically giving him away, that has to be one of the worst moves of the last 4 or 5 years. They might win the Super Bowl last year if they don't do that. Is that a fair comment to make?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Zach Miller seems like one of the blue chippers that are left. He might be the best tight end in the league for all we know. He's a terrible quarterback thrown to him. Is there a team that he could push over the top potentially? Well,
that's a great question, because I just asked somebody that in the league a little bit ago, and I was told that he doesn't have a lot of action. He turned down a huge deal from the Oakland Raiders before free agency. And there's a couple things going with Zach Miller right now. Excellent in the passing game, does a great job, runs routes, does all that. Very much a liability in pass protection, very much a liability when he has to stay in the running game and block. That really becomes a concern. So I think what teams are looking at is he's got to be in the right situation at the right offense. And I think it's very difficult to find that and then pay for it. And right now, unless he's got something that I'm not hearing about, there's not a lot of action going on with that. And I think ultimately, it'll heat up. But I think the deal he turned down with Oakland might still be the best deal on the table.
Oof. Explain to me some of these salary floor teams, because we're in a really unprecedented situation of, You have a team like Buffalo that's got to spend, I forget what the number is, but it's like $45-50 million to just get to that floor. And it's Buffalo. It's going to be tough for them to lure people over, and they might just have to overpay for a bunch of, basically turn into Billy King with the 2002 Sixers. Aaron McKee, Eric Snow, hey, here's $30 million. How are they? What if the team just can't get to the salary floor? What if nobody wants to play there?
Well, they've got 2 years. That this whole thing doesn't really kind of go into effect until 2 years. And it's over a league wide. So I think everybody's starting to understand the rules. But I think ultimately it gives you an opportunity to sign your second and third year player. I think you have to do that.
All right.
I think you have to look back on your players and get them and sign them and do all that.
Yeah, and yet they lost their middle linebacker, which seemed like if you're trying to get to a salary floor, that might be a guy you overpay.
Yeah,
right?
That one, he obviously just didn't want to play in that defense, and he obviously wanted to get out of Buffalo. When you see those moves, you just wonder what happened, and you know that it's more than just a money issue.
A team that is really fascinating, Tampa Bay, well under the salary floor, needs to spend money, and was actually pretty good last year. And you could argue that it was, they might have been a scheduled team. I think they finished 10-6. I can't remember. But, they definitely overachieved. They look like a likely candidate to regress this year, no question. But when you think of how little they spent on players last year to have the season they have, if they had gone and gotten Asamoah and one other blue chipper, that's a pretty intriguing team. They didn't do that. Why do you think?
Well, I think, they would have liked to gotten a Nnamdi situation because Aqib Talib is really, touch and go whether he's going to be on the team. But I think Tampa has this mentality where, right now I'm not sure everybody's buying into what they're doing in terms of the players in the league. It's one of those where you were good last year. Maybe it was the schedule. You should have beat Detroit at home if you were really a good team. If you're really a playoff team, Nnamdi maybe doesn't think they're really a viable playoff team. And I don't get the buzz around the league that people think they're one of the good young teams with a lot of prospects in the minor leagues. But they're going to have to prove it one more year that they can keep playing. I mean, they look like they could easily be a 6-10 team if they don't get it right. And I think that's where everybody's kind of being reluctant. They tried to go after Doug Free, the offensive lineman who signed with back with the Dallas Cowboys. They couldn't get him, and they've got a lot of money. So I think they're trying to hold tight and try to get good deals as opposed to just going out there and basically outspending everybody.
You mean like what Carolina just did?
Well, Carolina
just threw money around like maniacs.
They do it every year. I mean, but every time you hear when Carolina does this, there's always the caveat, well, we're a lot better than people think we are.
Yeah.
I told John Fox last year before he started, I said, John, if you go 8-8 with this team, you won't get coach of the year, you'll get coach of the decade. And he laughed at me. Oh, we're much better than that. Well, the reality of it is, but I think most people in the Carolina organization think they're a lot closer than they really are. Today, Steve Smith said he was going to stay. He doesn't want to be traded. But this thing's going to unravel again because who's going to get them all the football?
Well, a team that is getting a lot of buzz, and I don't know if it was our podcast or it was a coincidence or what's going on. But let's take credit for it anyway because I like taking credit for things. The Detroit Lions. Now 25-1 to win the Super Bowl. They have better odds than the Chicago Bears. What are they going to do during this little stretch here?
Well, they're trying to get a corner. They're desperately trying to get a corner. I think Jonathan Joseph is the guy they'd like to sign.
Ooh,
they need
nice
another corner. Their defensive rush, if they get any coverage in the back end, I think they can really be, the ball's not going to come out, not going to stay in the quarterback's hand very long with that pass rush and that ability to get after the quarterback. So, and then playing in a dome. So if they can get that, then I think if they keep Matthew Stafford healthy, I think that's the key component right there. They're able to get Calvin Johnson the ball. They've got backup running backs now. They've got a great running back in Javid Best, who I think can really emerge in the second season in the league. I mean, they're all in pieces. I'm concerned, Jeff Backus, there's some talk that he might have injured his pec muscle in this offseason. Haven't officially heard it to be true. But if they lose Backus at left tackle, that can be a real issue.
I'm on the bandwagon. I'm honing in. I'm targeting them. I like that team. I like the makeup. There's one guy out there that I guess is going to get released if he hasn't been already, but Ronnie Brown. Has anybody ever looked like more of a Belichick Patriot type running back than Ronnie Brown? Couldn't you see him on the Pats? Am I crazy?
Well, Well, they drafted Steve Ridley and they drafted other backs, so I can't really see him going up there. He's kind of
I can't either.
The problem with Reggie Brown is he's not one. He doesn't do everything great.
No, I'm talking about the guy in Miami, Ronnie Brown.
Ronnie Brown. I said Reggie Brown. Ronnie Brown. Yeah. He doesn't do everything great, and Miami's been looking to try to move on with him. He's got some moments. The Wildcat kind of came in and made him get going in terms of making some big plays, but from what I see when he plays, there's just not enough consistency running the ball inside the tackles. Ricky Williams is the perfect complement for him. I think Ronnie Brown's going to have a hard time getting a big-time job.
I was thinking of him like the token veteran running back who could come in and we'd run some weird wildcat play. I was kind of excited, but you're right. I think it's a numbers issue. So you think Ronnie's done? What about Ricky Williams? He's done too?
I think Ricky's going to have a hard time getting one, and I think Ronnie will get one, but I think it'll be tough. But they're calling me back to go on the air, so I've got to run.
Mike Lombardi, always a pleasure,
Bill.
And continue doing your Jerry Lewis routine on the NFL Network. We look forward to it and appreciate it. Take care. All right, let's go to a guy who's been killing it. He's been killing it this free agency period. I think he's written 18,000 words or something already for Grantland.com just in the past week. And now he's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. I believe he's losing his BS Report virginity. Bill Barnwell, what's happening?
It's very exciting to come on the free flow, as I like to call it personally.
Yeah, well, you got it. This is a big summer for you. Not only are you about to break the record for words written about free agency in a single month, but you're moving to Las Vegas in a couple weeks. Why don't you tell the audience about this move?
Well, as the audience may be aware, Bill, you are known as a connoisseur of all things Vegas, a big fan of the Vegas experience, and likewise, I have been a big fan for several years now. I just turned 27, so I've only been going for about 6 years, but we're going to have a very interesting column about living and gambling and losing and making awful mistakes in the wonderful city of Las Vegas, and I'm going to be penning that, and I'm moving next Wednesday. So I'm really excited, a little nervous, but, it's going to be a pretty interesting column, I think.
And we're going to come visit you this month before you go into that spiral. And things fall apart. Yeah, we're excited because we wanted to have a writer live in Vegas and write about that whole scene, and we wanted to hire you as our football guy, and we were able to kill two birds with one stone. So it'll be interesting. It'll be funny to see how fast you get immersed into that whole sportsbook scene too.
The word immersed is a kind way to put it. I'm more thinking like fall apart or end up destitute. But immersed is a really, really kind way to. It's a very Vegas friendly marketing kind of way to put it.
I'm waiting. I have the under on September 19th for the first time I get some email from you at like 2 a.m. asking me to wire you money.
That's in my contract, I think.
Let's talk about free agency. We're only 2 days in. Some crazy stuff going on. You were horrified by what the Seattle Seahawks did. Explain your reservations about their moves.
Well, here's the thing. You think about what the Seahawks have done over the past few years, and you like to think that you would learn your lessons. And the Seahawks just keep doing the same thing over and over again. They went out after that Darrell Jackson contract, when Darrell Jackson was playing for them. They went to the NFC Championship game. They won. They went to the Super Bowl. They lost. And then they got the sudden urge to start spending, umpteen sums of money on these average or a little better than average wide receivers. They went out and got Deion Branch, who was pretty bad for them, and got traded back to the Patriots last year. They went out and got Nate Burleson pretty much out of spite after the Vikings kind of stole Steve Hutchinson from them. And they went out and signed T.J. Hustonzada, and he lasted one season. He was, again, just a terrible pickup for them. And they've all got long-term contracts. They've all gotten big bonuses. And now they're going and doing it again. They're going out and getting Sidney Rice. And this is the same team that's been able to kind of get, guys like Bobby Ingram and Joe Jurevicius and Mike Williams off the scrap heap and contribute for them. So you would think, hey, at some point maybe you learn your lesson and you start going out and, bring in those kind of cheaper, maybe more motivated guys and not give huge contracts to players with injury problems who have been, real question marks and, waste money on these guys who just haven't produced for them.
And we both like Steve Breston, who went to Kansas City, which is a little bit of a strange fit. But, here's where it's just like, just put your VP of Common Sense cap on. Why not just pay Breston $10 million instead of Sidney Rice $48 million, especially when you don't have a good quarterback to throw balls to Sidney Rice? Like, I'm I'm just perplexed.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can understand going for Robert Gallery for the Seahawks, and they signed him, and I think that's a good signing because they needed a guard. He's, going to be a good run blocker. He's going to be part of a decent offense, but you've got Tavares Jackson probably as your starting quarterback going forward. Maybe Charlie Whitehurst is the upside if Charlie Whitehurst actually emerges as something reasonable. I mean, that's not something where you think, hey, I'm going to start building a big passing game and really get weapons for Tavares Jackson to work with because Tavares Jackson can't fire the weapons.
Right. Who's your favorite quarterback heading into this week for wow, if they get him, that's a move I'd really like? Who was that guy?
It has to be Orton, I think, just because he has the longest record of playing well at this level over the past couple of years and staying reasonably healthy. He's had some minor issues here and there with injuries, and obviously playing Josh McDaniels' offense is a huge boon, but I mean, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the league for, pretty much a full season in Denver. I mean, at what point do you say, this guy's undervalued? It was obviously Denver wanted to go with Tim Tebow. They were looking for an excuse to bench Orton. They finally got it, and Tebow came in, and he was Tim Tebow for better or worse. But Orton's an undervalued prospect at this point. I mean, he's not going to be a game changer. He's not going to be an elite quarterback, and everyone knows that. But he can be a league average starter for a year or two, and not cost David Garrard money or even Aaron Rodgers money. He can cost $4 or $5 million, and that's pretty valuable. You can devote your resources elsewhere and not worry about maybe getting an elite quarterback or spending money on a first round pick who may not even pan out.
In your free agency preview last week, which was extensive, you mentioned that there was some major risk in D'Angelo Williams, spending money on him, spending money on really any running back. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the Panthers took your advice, and they gave him $28 million guaranteed. You must have been horrified by that.
I felt bad for Panthers fans. I mean, you have, like I said in my article today, you have a guy, Marty Herney, who, was part of giving Jake Delhomme $20 million last season to play quarterback for the Browns. Somehow held on to his job after a 2-14 season, and is signing guys left and right, basically because he has to keep his job. It's a lot like Jerry Angelo last year with the Bears, where fortunately it worked out for him, but he had to go out and make a splash in free agency because otherwise, he was bringing back a mediocre team. Ernie's locking up the core of a terrible team. I mean, I think Williams has been a great player in the past, but when you look at what's happened with running backs, they just don't have a shelf life. I mean, look at the Patriots. The one decision they made at running back over the past decade or so, which was wrong, was giving Corey Dillon that long extension after his one big year. I mean, it was immediately, Maroney as well. But I mean, as far as money goes, shelling out for Dillon, when you've seen what they've done production-wise with guys like Antoine Smith, Kevin Falk, Woodhead, Green Ellis. I mean, it's not about the running back more often than not. Sure, Adrian Peterson's better than Jarvis Green Ellis. Nobody doubts that. But if you're spending for a guy like D'Angelo Williams and you're giving him $20 million guaranteed, the odds aren't that good that you're going to get the guy who you saw 3 years ago. You're going to get a shell of that guy, and that's just, if you have $20 million to spend on guaranteed money, you can make a lot better use of it than going out and signing a running back who's maybe past his prime.
Where, I don't know if this is going to happen. Lombardi and I just talked about if Revis and Asamoah ended up on the same team. Now it seems like Houston's taking the lead. There's certainly never been, I can't remember anything like the 1 and 2 best quarterbacks on the same team. In China, I don't think that's ever happened before, but just statistically, just looking at this from a Sabre standpoint, does that make sense for you to do that?
Yeah. I mean, not only from a Sabre standpoint, but also a schematic standpoint. I mean, Rex Ryan, his strengths really are scheming and coming up with blitz packages to get pressure with, 5, 6 guys. He doesn't always like a huge blitz. He usually keeps the safety back on the big blitzes. But, if he can get Asamoah and Revis on either side of the field, just locking up those sides of the field, he can rush 7 guys pretty much in every passing situation. And teams are not going to be able to stop Rex Ryan blitz packages with 7 guys, every third down. It's just not going to happen. They'll get 1 or 2 through, but it's just not going to happen. And with, Asamoah and Revis, I mean, there are some times with defensive metrics, they're still very much in their infancy. They're still very erratic. Once in a while you get crazy numbers where, like, Fred Bennett on the Texans is the best cornerback in football, and you say, oh, obviously this is nonsense. I'm not going to take this seriously. But Revis and Asamoah, by the numbers, the numbers match what the reputations are. I mean, they're not only are they the best cornerbacks in football, but by far they're the best cornerbacks in football. Like, there's a huge gap between them at 1 and 2 and everyone else in the league. And that's never happened before. I mean, the Raiders have had some great cornerbacks in the past, some great quarterback combinations, but nothing like this has ever happened before. And it's going to be, I really don't know how teams are going to be able to consistently attack the Jets' defense if that's the case. I mean, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now, it's the best possible move any team can make is the Jets signing Nnamdi Asomugha.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you just really scared me. I don't like where that just went. That went to a bad and dark place. Jonathan Joseph, who everybody really likes. So you're saying he's like a full giant teardrop below Asomugha.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Joseph is a very good cornerback, but he's not an, terrifying, elite, all-pro every year unless he gets hurt kind of cornerback. He's like, a Pro Bowler if the things go right and the players notice him and he has a bunch of interceptions. Asomugha and Revis are the two AFC Pro Bowl cornerbacks, the two all-pro NFL cornerbacks every season until proven otherwise. And Asomugha is a little older. He maybe has peaked, but he's still so good at this point. And Revis is just, an incredible cornerback at this point. Statistically, we're just at the point where you're not going to be able to throw on them unless you basically can trick Rex Ryan. And I have enough faith in Rex Ryan as a defensive coordinator that he's probably going to be smarter than most offensive coordinators and most quarterbacks out there. So as someone who doesn't really care about the Jets-Patriots rivalry beyond thinking it's interesting as a fan, I want to see it. I definitely want to see Asomugha go to the Jets. I think it's going to be the most fascinating thing that can come out of free agency this year. But, the Texans... I just remembered the 83 Raiders, I'm going to say. Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think those are maybe... I went back and looked at the numbers. I mean, that's the year before I was born, so my knowledge of 83 is a little murky, but I went back, and, I would say maybe that's maybe two of the 5 best cornerbacks in football. It's close, but it's not 1 and 2 the way that Revis and Asomugha are, or Asomugha and Revis are. I really think they're interchangeable, which is even scarier to an extent.
Right. Because the only reason I remember that was because Mike Haynes held out that year, and the Patriots traded him, and he was the best cornerback in the league. And you remember when your team traded the best guy.
You mean the Patriots traded somebody in the 80s, and he ended up playing well after the Patriots traded him?
Yeah. It was a staple. It was a staple of my childhood. Let's talk about the Lions. Lombardi and I talked about them a little bit earlier. That's the team I've been watching. I feel like they're close. Like, 1 or 2 more blue chippers away, and all of a sudden this is like a dark horse Super Bowl team if Stafford stays healthy. Do you agree?
I know my old boss, Aaron Schatz, at Football Outsiders, is obviously very high on them. I think he's picking them to win the NFC North this year. The thing for me is they have everything except a quarterback. And I wonder, even if Matt Stafford is healthy, is he really that guy? Do we really know that he's a viable NFL quarterback? I don't think we do, because he wasn't that great as a rookie. And there's nothing wrong with playing poorly as a rookie. It happens even to good quarterbacks. But, he's in his 3rd season now. He has basically, 12 games of NFL experience under his belt. Is he going to hold them back? And do you really want to be in the playoffs thinking, I'm on the road, I'm going to Philadelphia, I'm going to Atlanta, I'm going to New Orleans, and I have Matt Stafford as my quarterback? I mean, it's possible. I think that defense is going to be really good. I think the defensive line is so incredible, and I think that, they're going to be able to win a lot of low-scoring games. But I just don't know if Matt Stafford is that guy yet. And I really don't think I don't think the Lions know. I don't think Matt Stafford knows. I think we're going to have to see Matt Stafford stay healthy and see if he can play at a level that's going to be, suitable to get that offense going.
Maybe that's a Kyle Orton team.
That would be a great Kyle Orton team for 1 year, absolutely.
Yeah, they get a B- out of Kyle Orton. That might be. They just need somebody to just throw it in the general vicinity of Calvin Johnson. Just get it near him.
Like, you don't need to be great. You just need to get it in Calvin Johnson's way. The other thing with Johnson is I'm worried that Johnson can stay healthy too, because he gets hurt every year for a game or two. And those guys who get hurt for a game or two every year. Sidney Rice is a good example. Those guys don't get healthy when they get older. They end up getting hurt more and more. So I love how he's incredible.
They have another.
I'm worried about technology.
They have another guy, Javid Best, who's another injury guy. That's a guy who battled injuries in college, got injured last year. So, yeah, maybe that's the team that ropes in people like me and Schatz, and then it looks good for 4 weeks, and then it falls apart. because guys start getting hurt.
If everything goes right, they could be a 10-win team. They could be an 11-win team as early as this year. They need to stay healthy. If any team needs to invest in their medical staff right now, it's probably Detroit. Because if they can get everyone healthy, they can get everyone in for 16 games, they could win the NFC North. It's possible. I mean, the Packers obviously are, a budding juggernaut, but they're an injury from Rodgers away from, being a struggling team. And I like Eflin, but even so, they definitely have potential, but they got to stay healthy.
Let's walk me through my fantasy scenario where rejuvenated and in shape Albert Haynesworth comes in, does what Moss did in 2007, says and does all the right things, becomes this dominant force on the D-line, wins the hearts of everybody in New England. What does that mean for the New England defense?
Well, hopefully he doesn't get injured before the Super Bowl the way Moss did. But
yeah, that would suck.
I'm sorry. Realistically, Haynesworth is he didn't play that poorly during his first season in Washington before, kind of the real contractual issues came up and he really became persona non grata there. He was injured. He's always been a guy who has those nagging injuries that kind of bother him, but he plays through them and he doesn't sit down and not play through them. And he's a really great pass rusher. I mean, when you watch him on tape in 2009 and even in 2010 at times, he's a dominant athlete and he's able to get to the quarterback even through double teams, even through the middle of the line where guys get caught up very easily. And that's a really rare quality. I mean, guys just don't get the kind of pass pressure that he does from the interior of the defensive line. And he'll end up being, if they spot him properly, I think that's the biggest thing. I think that you can't look at Haynesworth right now and say, okay, we can pencil him in for 60 snaps a game. It's just not going to happen. But if you can find 30 snaps a game for him and say, okay, he's going to be a situational guy at first, maybe we can get more out of him, but maybe we just, at first just say, okay, nickel packages, passing downs, just use him there. He can end up being, not a 10-sack guy, maybe a 7 or 8-sack guy and really be a difference maker in the defense. I don't think he can be Moss, but I think he can be, a really good situational guy and at the right salary, that could be really valuable for the Patriots because they really are struggling to find a pass rush.
Yes. I even though I tweeted this today, he's a lousy guy. I don't agree with some of the stuff he's done, but it's a good gamble. They gave up nothing, and it's low risk. They can cut him, but there's no reason for them not to make that move, I don't think, and they need a pass rush. Over the last 2.5 days, it's a little early, but is there a team that you feel like you look at what they did just in the last 2.5 days, and you're going, whoa, that's now a real team? Has anybody emerged like that yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I really like what the Jets did. I think you have to go for it this year. I think you have to say, okay, we're all in. We're going to put, we're going to take the best players on the market and go after them. And if the Jets can get Holmes and Asamoah, they win. I mean, they win free agency. It's just the right thing you have to do. The Panthers, I mean, I don't like what they're doing, but I think that they've, they at least have a plan. I don't like the plan, but, I really think I don't like when teams kind of will make moves that don't make sense in context where you'll cut a veteran and then sign a veteran to replace them, and it's really just shuffling, deck chairs. I like teams that have plans and go after them, and we're still a couple days away because most of the major free agents haven't really signed anywhere. I think something like maybe 6 of the 8, top-tier guys that I came up with in my free agency preview are still out there, so, I mean, there's still a lot of guys out there. I want to see what Kansas City does. Steve Preston thing confuses me, but I think if they can add O'Brien Franklin, if they can get a nose tackle, that defense is going to be a huge upgrade for them. But I think everything's still up in the air. I think it's really going to be an interesting next couple days because there's still so many guys out there on the market. There's going to be veterans getting cut. The only team I can think of that really stands out as being proactive in a good way for me is Baltimore. And I always love what Baltimore does, but they went out and they cut guys they cut Willis McGahee, they cut Derek Mason, they cut Todd Heap, and those are big name guys, but they're not playing at that level anymore. And bad teams hold on to them and try and restructure and renegotiate and hope that it's going to work out for them, and it never works out. Very rarely do guys who are playing at a low level as veterans really take a step forward again. And hopefully, the Ravens use that for something good. Maybe they can go out and get Jonathan Joseph, or maybe they can go after Asamoah and really get a dominant cornerback to go behind that pass rush, which can be really gruesome at times. It could be a really, that could kind of be the last thing that pushes them over the hump when it comes to them versus the Steelers, because they need to beat the Steelers in the playoffs at some point to really, justify their existence at this point.
Yeah, it seems like the smart teams are kind of hanging back. The teams that we knew like the Ravens, I think, are a smart team. I think the Patriots are smart. I think the Giants are smart. I think the Packers are smart. You haven't seen any of these teams come flying in these first 2.5 days, really, except for the Haynesworth, and that was low risk. But Absolutely. It seems like they're biding their time.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's because they're confident. They're confident they can develop guys to, play in the middle of the market and not have to go out and find players to do that. I mean, teams that don't draft well have to go out and fill holes. That's their first concern in free agency. Teams like the Patriots, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Eagles, they can go out and pick and choose exactly what they want. They can go and shop at the top of the market, or they can take chances at the bottom of the market. But they're not going out and shelling out big guarantees because they couldn't develop a running back. They couldn't go out and add a mid-level guard or something like that. And that's really, it's really freeing if you're a general manager, and you don't have to worry about going out and just filling holes. If you can just go out and buy what you want, it's a huge advantage for you.
All right. I hate to do this. It hurts my soul, but I'll give you 90 seconds to discuss the Giants. Go ahead.
I am a little concerned as a Giants fan because they're making some major shifts in the offensive line. That was the core of that team that won in 2007. That offensive line was just downright dominant, especially the year after as well. They really, we're getting MVP consideration as a unit because they were playing so well. You release Rich Seibert, you release Sean O'Hara. They brought in David Boss from the 49ers, who's going to be a center for them. They can move David Deal inside to left guard and bring in Will Beatty at left tackle, but a left tackle is a dangerous place. You don't want to have a question mark at left tackle. And they're going to have either David Deal, who's been pretty erratic over the past few years as a pass protector at left tackle, and have inexperience at left guard next to him and a new center, or they're going to have Will Beatty, who hasn't been a left tackle at the NFL before, playing out there. And that's concerning for me, thinking about the Giants offense. I'm also worried about who's going to play across from Hakeem Nicks because Steve Smith had major surgery on his knee. Really sad story, actually. The guy didn't extend his contract, and he's not going to be the same guy after the surgery. It's really a severe microfracture sort of surgery that's really going to inhibit him from playing at that level again. So they might have peaked last year. They may not have as good of a team this next year as they're going to have last year. The drafting hasn't been that well over the past few years, and not too psyched. But
wow.
I know. I don't mean to be a buzzkill about them. I'm always very negative on them. I'm always down on the Giants, but especially so this year. I definitely, Hakeem Nicks is great, but they're investing serious money in the running game. After they gave Brendan Jacobs that contract, and he kind of busted out, didn't really play very well. They're going to do the same thing with Ahmad Bradshaw, I'm worried about. They're going to give him another contract. He's going to play poorly too, so not that psyched about the Giants this year.
For the record, that wow wasn't a wow, I can't believe Barnwell is this disenchanted. It was a wow, this is one of the best reverse jinxes I've ever heard in my life. It was a really fantastic 2-minute reverse jinx. I loved it.
I appreciate it.
I have to say, though, it's not like everybody else in your division has really been boning up. It seems like that division might be a mess this year. It's fair to say?
It's hard to say. I think it really comes down to the Eagles. If the Eagles can get a cornerback, if they can get Joseph, they can get Asamoah, if they can even get, a Cromartie maybe to play across from Asante Samuel, they're going to be really good. I'm really scared about the Eagles. And the other thing is Vic has to stay healthy. I mean, I think Vic is going to throw more interceptions next year. I think his interception rate was sort of unsustainably low last year. He made a lot of mistakes and got away with it. Of course, he's still a fantastic quarterback. They're not going to take that away from him or anything. But, if Vic gets hurt, if Jackson holds out and the offense isn't the way that it should be, if McCoy gets injured, there's question marks in Philadelphia. I could see it going wrong, but at this point, it kind of looks like they're head and shoulders above everybody else. I just don't see how anyone's going to compete with them because they can pass rush really well and they can score on anybody. They're kind of like the Colts, of the NFC at this point.
Another great reverse jinx. I loved it. NFC North seems like it's going to be the marquee division this year because even like you look at a team like Minnesota, 6-10, but man, you could not have had more distractions, bad luck, guys getting injured at the wrong time, yet the weird coaching thing. That's a team to me. I know they're 6-10. I don't really like McNabb that much, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were better. I think Detroit's going to be better. Green Bay's just freaking deep, and the Bears are good too. That to me, that's the marquee division in the NFC. You agree?
I think so. Yeah, and I'm with you on the Vikings. I'm higher on McNabb than you are because, he was playing in Washington. His receivers were Santana Moss and Anthony Anderson and Anthony Armstrong confused. One of them is the actor. The other one is the wide receiver for the Redskins. But, I mean, there just wasn't a great offense around him. And he played okay. He wasn't great, but I watched a lot of Redskins games last year, and I saw a lot of drop passes. A lot of them were not McNabb's fault. I really think he's going to be a good wide receiver in Minnesota. Maybe not a great one. They're a good quarterback in Minnesota. Not a great one, but he's going to be good enough to get by. And they have Adrian Peterson. I mean, they have one of the best offensive players in football, and the defense was great until last year. And they had a lot of injuries, especially in the secondary. If they can get Cedric Griffin back, if they can get a healthy defensive line again, if Jared Allen can kind of get back on the horse, and I think he will, they could be a good team really quickly. I really think it's going to be one of those divisions where it's just going to come down to who stays healthy and, who wins those close divisional games. But I could see any of the 4 teams in that division winning the NFC North next year, and that's certainly a scary proposition when you think about, trying to bet on them at the very least.
Right. Last question. There's rumors that Ocho Cinco might be headed somewhere today. Do you think he's washed up? Do you feel like he's got 1 year left? Do you feel like if he landed on a team like, say, one of the 2 teams that we root for, he would be good? Where do you stand on this?
This is a very nervous reverse jinx attempt here, I think, by you. He's one of those guys where he's a complimentary receiver at this point. He's not a number one guy. I mean, he's still got good hands, and that goes a long way. He can still get a little bit of separation. He's not quite at the T.O. level yet as far as how far he's fallen, but he's not a number one guy, and he has to be a complimentary part. And if he's willing to do that, then yeah, I would take him on my team for $1 million or $2 million, but I'm not going to pay him to be a number one guy.
Vegas. I'm looking at the Super Bowl odds right now. Here are the teams that are over. The teams that are over 40-1. Cardinals 50-1. But the Buffalo Bills are, I think, 150-1. Same for the Panthers. Browns are 60-1. Broncos 60-1. Jaguars 60-1. Dolphins 40-1. Raiders 50-1. 49ers 40-1. Seahawks 80-1. Rams 50-1. Titans 60-1. Redskins 60-1. Do we like any of those teams?
Rams.
I agree. 50-1 seems high.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, you want a team in that situation where they're going to be in the weak division and they have a shot at home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Of all those teams, who could you see going 12-4? I mean, the Rams have one of the easiest schedules in football every season. Sam Bradford is the guy. I mean, Sam Bradford's a legit NFL quarterback. We know that already. And he's in Josh McDaniels' offense. And when has a quarterback done poorly with Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator? It just hasn't happened yet.
Right.
A lot of injuries at wide receiver last year, and the defense is getting better. I mean, there's a lot of things to like there.
Yeah, their problem issues are problems that, or last year their problem issues are problems that are pretty easy to address. Like they needed better wide receivers. You can go get those, et cetera, et cetera. Also, it looks like San Fran might have thrown the white flag for this year, and I don't like what Seattle did. So, and Kevin Cobb, I don't see him going in Arizona and turning that franchise around right away. It just seems like that division might actually be worse than it was last year, except for the Rams. So I agree with you. 50-1 is too high. Yeah. Well, when you go to Vegas, maybe as a sign of our bond that you're there, that you're my adopted son living in Vegas, maybe we'll splurge on a Rams ticket. We could have that and hold on to it all year. Sam Bradford takes us to the promised land. Be good.
That would be a very wonderful bet to follow all season. I'm happy to join with you on our Rams quest for the Super Bowl.
And I look forward to you hyphenating your last name to Bill Barnwell Simmons, which should be big. We get the paperwork done on that. Last thing, I think Barnwell needs an official sports book. We might have to actually court these sports books. Yeah, I think you need preferential treatment at one of these places. You're going to be coming on the BS Report this season. You're writing for Grantland. I think somebody's got to butter you up a little bit with at least a free chicken finger once a week or something.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not concerned about selling out. I mean, I'm shopping at IKEA today. I'm getting some stuff for the new place. I'm perfectly happy calling it the Klondike Couch. I mean, I'm willing to do that without a problem.
Beautiful. But, love to hear it.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. You could maybe have a deal where you just eat Subway subs every single time you're in a sports book. We'll figure something out. I know you're ready to just blow this out, so we're fired up. Bill Barnwell, we will talk to you next week. you're coming back. We will discuss the first 9 or 10 days of free agency. But love the stuff you're doing on Grantland. Congrats on everything. It's been great, and we'll see you soon.
Tremendous. Thank you, Bill.
All right, just to follow up on what we talked about Lombardi and Barnwell, apparently the deal is complete. Kevin Cobb to Phoenix for a second-round pick and Rogers Cromartie, the cornerback. So it seems like a lot for Kevin Cobb. I almost feel like calling Barnwell back, but instead we're going to call my buddy Joe House because he's earned the right to. He's earned 3 minutes to say goodbye to Albert Haynesworth, one of his least favorite Washington Redskins athletes ever. So let's call him.
Na 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 na. Hey hey hey. Goodbye.
All right, I'm glad you were able to get that out of your system.
Yeah, it's out.
I feel like
I'm sorry to see him go. He's a once-in-a-generation player.
In what respect?
He's an alleged boob toucher. He's an alleged road rager. He is a documented belly flopper, and he is the first player in my lifetime to compare a coach asking him to play a certain position in a certain style of play to slavery. So as far as I'm concerned, once in a lifetime.
And you left out the part where he stomped on the Cowboy center's face and opened the.
Well, he didn't do that as a Redskin.
I know, but he had that. He brought that history with him.
Yeah, like I say, once in a lifetime kind of player.
And now he's on my team. I kind of feel like it's like you gave me VD. Basically, how this could have worked out potentially.
You know, there have been occasions over our 25-year friendship where that may or may not have come into play.
Yeah,
but
I didn't want to bring that up. Yeah, but it is kind of funny that Haynesworth was passed from you to me, and now maybe I think it get a little awkward with us if he's fantastic on the Patriots because
he's going to be
fantastic.
There's 100% chance. There's 110% chance that he is going to be awesome for the Patriots. In many respects, I'm fine with it. I mean, you know, he is the epitome of every sort of. He's the full accumulation of Snyder mistakes. He is the poster child for the Dan Snyder era. Every possible mistake, all woven into one. That's what Albert Haynesworth is. What was to the Washington Redskins.
It's kind of funny that McNabb and Haynesworth jettisoned within, I guess, 24 hours of each other. And I forget, you signed Haynesworth. He crushed your cap for 2 years. You traded what for McNabb? I don't remember. Second-round pick?
Yeah, like
first-round pick. Oh, it was a high second-round pick. Yeah. And then they parlayed that into...
2 really quality picks.
And they parlayed that into a fifth-rounder in 2013.
Yes.
And then what did Minnesota give them for McNabb?
Oh, the same thing, like 2 sixth-rounders, I think.
Yeah. Not really a good trade.
Is that your official analysis?
It's my expert opinion, is that I really like that swap for the Redskins of a second and a fourth and crushing your cap for 2 years to end up with a fifth and 2 sixths. I wouldn't do that again.
Here's what's weird. The range of emotions I went through when it was formally announced that there would be football, that the season was going to go forward in full. Yeah. I'm thrilled beyond belief. I'm so excited for so many aspects of my life, my gambling life, my fantasy life, the quality of the television that's going to be on. Yeah. But there's another part of me that really despaired because what team am I going to root for this year? What are the Washington Redskins going to look like? Who's the quarterback?
Well, you disowned the Orioles once upon a time because you hated the owner so much that he literally ruined baseball for you.
That's right.
I don't think you can't have football ruined for you, but it is possible to be a gigantic football fan and gamble and be in fantasy leagues and picks pools and do the whole thing without having a favorite team. You could get to the point here where you just disown the Redskins because I got to be honest, I don't think he's ever selling that team.
Yeah, I will never disown the Redskins, and the strategy that I've employed the last half dozen years is kind of, waiting for that game in a season when it's okay for me to stop paying attention to what they're doing. So this year, it was the Eagles game, or last year. It was the Eagles game where Michael Vick scored 11 touchdowns.
Where Michael Vick ruined every fantasy league.
Well, right.
For 4 quarters.
Yeah. Because that game came on the heels of, I think that was the game after the bye week that followed the Detroit game when McNabb got benched.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the sequence.
Yeah. Are they
and the Detroit game, I was still in. I was still watching all those games, and then Shanahan took him out in the fourth quarter with, the game still in doubt, the outcome still in doubt. And that was it. So we'll see. This season, it might come much earlier. I might be, a pure gambling play this year for me. The Redskins, I might be out on them after Game 3.
Are they rumored to be going after any blue chippers, or is just because Snyder? It's hard for me to believe that there's probably like 5 or 6 really good players left. It's hard for me to believe that he wouldn't splurge on one of them. He can't help himself.
I have to tell you the truth. I haven't read anything. I've deliberately not looked.
Really? Wow, you've ignored the team. I like that.
I just can't take it. You know what I mean? I'm not prepared. Like I say, that range of emotions that I was confronted with around the Monday announcement, on the one side, tremendous joy, and on the other side, abject despair.
Right.
So I haven't brought myself to, diving in and really reviewing all the options and everything. I did sort of slightly hope that McNabb might turn into Kyle Orton. I thought that would be at least interesting.
Yeah.
But it would have been a McNabb for Orton kind of trade. But, that shockingly didn't happen. So I guess John Beck and Sexy Rexy Grossmanberger are going to fight it out.
Well, I thought you guys would be something like D'Angelo Williams for $70 million waiting to happen, but that didn't happen. Antonio Cromartie is somebody that Dan Snyder could totally overpay.
Is Asamoah? Did he sign with anybody?
No, he hasn't, but he wants to play for a winning team, which rules the Redskins out, unfortunately.
Well, would he take $120 million to, look the other way?
He's been pretty consistent about I want to play for a winner.
Okay.
Which, again, rules the Redskins out. But, yeah, I feel like you could be maybe Antonio Cromartie for $53 million, and then they try to get him and Champ Bailey going together. Yeah, that could be a Dan Snyder-y kind of a move, right?
Cromartie would be entertaining at least.
Maybe Darren Sproles for $42 million. Yeah, he'll do something crazy. He can't lay out. He hasn't been in the headlines all week. He can't. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to sit this out. He's got to do something.
I don't think that's true. The Haynesworth and McNabb trades those are both glaring failures.
Oh, here's one for you. I got it. Here's the guy, Braylon Edwards, $59 million.
Oh, well, you would think after the Redskins signed 4 wide receivers over the age of 30 in these past 2 days that they might, consider themselves all set at receiver, but that's absolutely the kind of thing that the Redskins would be poised to do. That's precise. I bet Braylon Edwards is here by Saturday.
Well, I might have to rope you in to write something for the sports blog for some sort of.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Think for the Redskins.
Yeah, right.
Maybe just to get every 3 weeks you get 600 words to just write terrible things about Dan Snyder and the Redskins. Be happy to afford you that platform.
There's plenty. I'm positive there'll be plenty to choose from.
Joe House, a pleasure as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, you enjoy Fat Albert. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.